I've been doing heirloom sewing for about 10 years now, and here are the 5 notions I think you need as a beginner into this world. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, and like I said, I've been doing heirloom sewing for about 10 years, and I've been sewing for myself long before that. And here are the 5 notions, maybe 6, and we'll get into that I think you need as a beginner so you have a great experience, your quality of your garments come out nice, but you're also not, buying every single notion under the sun and spending a fortune as a beginner. You don't even know if you're going to like this or not. So, spending the least amount of money but getting the most bang for your buck is what I'm trying to say. Notion number one of those scissors. You're going to need a pair of shears. And as a beginner, you can use these shears for a multitude of things. You're going to want to invest as much money as you are willing and capable of investing into these shears because they are going to, oh my gosh, they control so much of your happiness when it comes to sewing. Let's be real. If you've got scissors that are not cutting through your fabric, it's kind of a miserable experience, and your results are not so great either. So I like to use the Ginger scissors. There are definitely way fancier options out there, but I think Ginger has a great bang for your buck sort of thing. The scissors that I use, the shears, they have a locking mechanism on them and they are spring loaded. And those are two things I think that you should look for is the spring loading will help your hands out so much just doing a lot of the work instead of your hands doing all that work and getting cramps in your hands. And then now that it has a spring, it needs to have a lock in order to keep the scissors closed when you're not using them. I had a pair of Fiskars years ago that were plastic and they were spring loaded, and the lock on it was plastic. So while they worked fine, they would sit on my table, locked up, and then every once in a while they would just ping, open up and scare the living daylights out of me. So I really like the metal lock because it doesn't do that. Then the next thing is you're going to need some pins. And even as a beginner, I recommend that people go with those glass head pins or at least an all metal pin. So what I'm trying to say is you should stay away from the plastic head pins, with the little plastic beads at the end, because when you're doing heirloom sewing, very often you sew over your pins, especially with lace work and things like that. So if you're sewing over a plastic head, then that plastic is likely to melt. And it's likely to melt into your really expensive lace or really nice fabric. And then you've got yourself a hot mess in a hurry, and it can all be avoided if you just use glass head pins or metal pins. Typically, the glass head pins are going to be sharper than the metal pins, so you're not, you have less risk of snagging fabric and things, other issues that you can come across with having pins. So I recommend the glass head pins. You can get a little package of them. I think they're like $5 or $6, so they're not an arm and a leg, but they are more expensive than the plastic ones, but well worth it. How do you store these pins? Well, we all have seen that nostalgic, tomato cushion. I don't recommend that though. I recommend using a magnet pin cushion, or not pin cushion, a magnet holder. The magnet is a complete game changer. You can just like throw a pin in the general direction of that magnet and it sucks it right up, so you don't have to actually place the pin into the cushion, which I know seems like I'm splitting hairs, but I'm telling you it is a huge thing just to be able to toss her over instead of having to like find a slot and do all of that. The other thing is that if somehow maybe you've got little ones sewing under your feet and you find yourself with pins all over the floor, you can just take the magnet and, run it over the floor and have all of those pins get sucked up into the magnet as opposed to having to pick them up individually and put them back in your pin cushion. So I highly recommend the magnet over that pin cushion. I know the pin cushion is very nostalgic and it's cute and everything, but the magnet is so much more practical. Then the other thing I think you should have are strips of interfacing. As a beginner, you may not know how absolutely of a game changer having strips of interfacing are as opposed to just yards of interfacing. So interfacing is something that it just refines your sewing. If you're likely you're going to want to use them around collars, down facings, depending on what fabric you're doing and what garment you're making. But interfacing is a great tool just to kind of provide a tiny bit of structure, get things to lay a little bit, just more into place. So it's a good tool to have. Now, when you order interfacing by the yardage, you get yards of interfacing. Imagine that. And then you've got to deal with it. And if you're doing heirloom sewing for babies, you just need a little section, but you've got all of these yards to deal with and to store and to figure out what service am I going to cut you on, and then I'm going to fold you back up now that you've got a little piece missing and it doesn't really fold all that well. The strips of interfacing, it's a product from Farmhouse Fabrics. It's absolutely brilliant idea on their part. They sell it in white, ivory, and I believe black, and it's just a 2-inch wide strip. I keep them next to my sewing machine, go through them like Tic Tacs, and it's a great, great product. And you can just have a little strip onto that collar or that facing or wherever, and you're on your way. The last, well, kind of the last thing that I think you really should have is a pointer tool. This pointer tool, it if you want to go from yes I made this to ooh this looks really nice, right? That whole oh my mama made this handmade kind of look to like ooh this was a really nice job. The pointer is one of the things you need to have in your arsenal. It takes all the little corners out of what do you call it, like the back of a bodice. That's the word, the back of like a bodice or a yoke, that little top area. Um, Collars, so many applications for this pointer tool to just kind of refine your work, get it to the next level. And it's not expensive. You buy it once and you've got it forever. So the sixth thing that you may or may not want to have, depending on where you see yourself going with this whole journey, is a marking device. If you see yourself dabbling into embroidery work, you're definitely going to want to have a marking device. The other thing is that you may want to have it just to mark certain things onto your pattern, to transfer certain things from your pattern onto your fabric. You can get around this by putting clip marks with your scissors. I do that a lot. So if you don't see yourself doing hand embroidery, you may not want to buy a marking device. But if you want to dabble in that, you're going to need to have a marking device. Now, a lot of people know of the water-soluble pen. I believe it's by Dritz. I'm sure there are other companies that make it, but it's the blue ink. I do not like this pen. I used it way back when, and the idea of this pen is that you mark on your fabric and then it comes out with water. Well, it's supposed to, and often you've got to really, really soak your fabric, which is an ordeal of itself because now you're having to stop your workflow, especially if you have little ones. You can hear my little ones running out there. Maybe you're doing it during nap time. Now, the rest of nap time, you can't be productive because your fabric is wet and you have to get this stupid ink out. Anyhow. So it's not very productive. So if you're somebody who has limited time, it's not really the pen for you. But even if you have all the time in the world, I have been in the situation where I have soaked that stuff overnight. I've really, really rinsed it very well, and I'll come to it. It'll look like it's gone, and it'll dry, and the mark will reappear. Heaven forbid you iron over that and the mark reappears. Now you may have set the ink with the heat of your iron, and there's not really any getting it out. Maybe sometimes you can get lucky, but it can just go down this hot mess in a hurry sort of situation. Whereas the friction heat activated pen, the idea of that is that you mark on your fabric and then it comes out with heat. This can be heat from your iron or your blow dryer, which is a great thing if you don't want to mash your iron onto something. You can just use your blow dryer. Like maybe you have some really delicate hand embroidery work that's 3D, a bunch of bullions or whatever. Then you can just use your blow dryer and it comes out, and that's a wonderful tool, like ability to have. And you don't lose any time. You just do the heat and it comes out. There's going to be somebody down in the comments who the reason people complain about the heat activated pen, somebody down in the comments is going to say, is that it comes back in extreme heat, and that is true. And I did a video on this probably about 3 years ago. So not Dritz. So the friction heat activated pen, if it is in an extreme cold, like 30 degrees Fahrenheit or below, for an extended period of time, those marks will come back. It's not a big deal because you just apply some heat to it again and the marks go right away. If you though want a solution, maybe you've made this garment for the winter time and you live somewhere that gets an extreme cold. So if you want them to be completely gone, like permanently, there are two products you can buy. One is called Amodex and the other is called, oh goodness, Mosh Gosh something or other that I'm sure I'm butchering the heck out of. And both of these will absolutely take the ink out and it will not come back no matter how cold you get or for how long. So those are the notions that I think you should have as a beginner. There are other videos in this, beginner's heirloom series over here you can go check out. If you have any questions, of course, put them in the comments down below and I will do my best to answer them. And as always, I appreciate y'all for watching and I hope to catch y'all next time.